Wish you all a very good evening, respected seniors and my dear colleagues. With your permission, I begin the presentation of today's topic titled Role of Vildagliptin in the Management of Type 2 Diabetes, as mentioned by Ms. Shraddha. Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm Dr. Shourabh Das Chaudhary. I'm a practicing physician at Behrampur. Now, at the very onset, any discussion pertaining to type 2 diabetes falls well short of its intention if you are not adequately addressing the global pandemic, so to say, of diabetes mellitus. Yes, we are in the midst of an acute pandemic, the dreaded COVID 19, and hopefully towards the fag end of the second wave and gearing up for the upcoming third one. But yes, we do need to understand that throughout decades, especially for the past few decades with rapid urbanization, the havoc that is being played by type 2 diabetes mellitus. This is 2017 IDF data. The world has 425 million diabetics. 1.5 million deaths directly due to diabetes, and 1 out of 6 such patients are from India. Yes, this is 2017 data. 73.9 million diabetics directly contributed by India. And if you're looking at the projections, we already have the 2019 IDF data as well. India's numbers have increased to around 77 million diabetics. And kindly note that the projections worldwide tend to get worse. 2017 IDF gives a projection of around 629 million diabetics by the year 2045. The 2019 slightly increases this to around 700 million diabetics and adult diabetics between 20 and 79 years of age by the year 2045. What is also noteworthy is that it's not only the rich nations, the developed nations which have already undergone urbanization that will bear the brunt of diabetes mellitus, but it's the poorest of the poor nations, places like sub-Saharan Africa, which is going to see a massive surge in the number of diabetics. In fact, sub-Saharan Africa is going to see a surge of around 156% as far as total number of diabetics are concerned. And of course, by 2045, the entire Southeast Asian region, it's already contributing majorly to the total diabetic numbers. In fact, not only India and China, which are currently the world leaders as far as the contribution to the number of diabetics are concerned, but also adjoining countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, which are going to bear the brunt of this dreaded diabetes mellitus pandemic throughout the world by 2045. Just to give an idea, now unfortunately your diabetes mellitus never sleeps. So no matter how well you control your patient of diabetes, no matter how wonderfully compliant your diabetic patient is towards your pharmacotherapeutic and non-pharmacological advice, the diabetes is only going to get worse. The insulin resistance is going to go up and plateau off. The insulin levels are going to come down. The beta cell function, and yes, beta cell function, and for that matter, beta cell mass pertaining to the DPP4 inhibitors is something we are going to discuss in some details in the subsequent section of our presentation. That is going to go down. Hepatic glucose production and the postprandial glucose, and kindly note the hepatic glucose production is indeed a part of the dreaded diabetic octet that we also will be discussing, and we will be also be understanding the role of metformin in reduction of the hepatic glucose production. That at the end of the day it is going to get worse, and the postprandial and the fasting plasma glucose are going to increase no matter what. Also, the microvascular and macrovascular complications are going to progress, and just looking at the curve, we do need to note that the macrovascular complications, the cardiovascular issues, these not only begin at the point of diagnosis of frank diabetes, something that we define with a fasting more than 127, a PP more than equal to 200, a random more than equal to 200 along with features of hyperglycemia, and HbA1c more than 6.5. But the development of macrovascular complications begin well in advance, even in the stage of pre-diabetes, something that we call impaired fasting glucose and impaired glucose tolerance. Just trying to ascertain the Indian condition. I'm so sorry, we'll go back to the previous slide here. I'm just trying to ascertain the Indian condition. If we are talking about 100 patients with diabetes in India, only 15 patients are such that who have well controlled diabetes. 3 patients with uncontrolled diabetes are at least aware of the fact that they indeed have uncontrolled diabetes. So 15 plus 3 is 18. 32 patients would be such who have uncontrolled diabetes. They do know that they have diabetes, but they are not aware of the fact that they have uncontrolled diabetes. So 15 plus 3 plus 32 is 50. And the remaining 50 out of 100 patients are undiagnosed. They do not even know that they have diabetes. But India doesn't have 100 people with diabetes. India has 77 million people with diabetes. So 38 million people in India are not even aware of the fact that they have diabetes. And you can already begin to ascertain the huge lacunae in diabetes control that we have in India. With this basic understanding, we are moving on to the further details of our discussion. This is indeed the diabetic ominous octet, the decrease in incretin effect, increased lipolysis, increased glucose reabsorption. Yes, when we read about SGLT2 inhibitors, we indeed know this is what the SGLT2 inhibitors address. Yes, the decrease in incretin effect, this is indeed taken care of by at least two classes of anti-diabetic agents. One oral agent, that would be the DPP4 inhibitors. The components of the DPP4 inhibitors would be vildagliptin, linagliptin, sitagliptin, teneligliptin, and so on and so forth. Another class would obviously be the GLP-1 agonist. We will not really be delving further into GLP-1 agonist injectable molecules, and if I may add, slightly more expensive molecules compared to the most of the oral anti-diabetic agents that we have in our armamentarium. Decreased glucose uptake in muscles, neurotransmitter dysfunction, increased hepatic glucose production. We indeed talked about the role of biguanines, that is metformin, in reduction of the hepatic glucose production, increased glucagon secretion, and the effect of DPP4 inhibitors on the alpha cells along with the beta cells is something that we will be discussing subsequently, and impaired insulin secretion, once again something that is taken care of by the insulin secretagogues. So this is the diabetes ominous octet, and we will try to ascertain the role of the combination or the early combination of vildagliptin and metformin, for that matter DPP4 inhibitors with metformin, in such situations. Controlling the ominous octet involved in the pathogenesis of type 2 diabetes. So multiple pathophysiological defects should be targeted, as indeed is by the DPP4 class of agents. Early initiation of combination therapy. We will try to look at the different guidelines throughout the world, be it the ADA guidelines, be it the EASD guidelines, be it the NICE guidelines, and understand the role of early initiation of combination therapy. Yes, most guidelines throughout the world would be recommending metformin as monotherapy, but yes, indeed there is a place of early initiation of combination therapy according to certain guidelines. Combination therapy should include multiple drugs with different mechanism of action, and diabetes management demands not only lowering of the blood glucose but also delaying disease progression. Indeed, if we look at any of the guidelines throughout the world in today's world, we would find that rather than the absolute diabetic control only, nowadays, thanks to the multiple dedicated cardiovascular outcome trial that we have pertaining to different molecules, it is essentially after the first line therapy with metformin, the second line agent is often selected by the role on ASCVD risk, on the role on CKD, on the role or weight gain, or indeed frank promotion of weight loss, CKD related issues, yes, cost being another issue as well. But these would be the other different modalities rather than the absolute blood sugar control. It is indeed the added pleiotropic mechanism of the different groups of agent that plays a very important role in selection of the add-on therapy to the first line metformin according to most guidelines. Now, why is combination therapy required for management of diabetes? Of course, inadequate control indeed is by far the most important risk factors, and we have our target HbA1c. It is slightly patient modifiable depending on the comorbidities that is present in the patient. So it's not that someone like me, I am a 35-year-old relatively young patient. If I have diabetes, my target HbA1c, and I don't have any ASCVD risk, I don't have a CKD, so the HbA1c target in someone like me would obviously be different from, say, an 80-year-old patient who has multiple previous episodes of maybe hypoglycemia, who has some degree of CKD, who has some degree of ASCVD risk. In such a patient, Obviously, the HbA1c target or the diabetic target would be different from my target. Clinical inertia continues to be a very significant factor, particularly addition of the second or the third line agent, up titration of the dosage continues to be a very important factor, particularly in research poor countries like India. Deterioration of beta cell function and subsequently in some cases the beta cell mass, increase in microvascular and macrovascular complications, intolerance or poor response, overall safety issues, increase in cardiovascular disorders, ASCVD. In today's world, we have a very appealing terminology of the 3P MACE, the major adverse cardiovascular event, or for that matter, even the 4P MACE, which would include the cardiovascular death, the non-fatal MI, the non-fatal stroke, and heart failure associated issues, including but not limited to hospitalization due to heart failure, of course, CKD incidences, macroalbuminuria, microalbuminuria, and the role of different molecules in the reduction in progression of microalbuminuria and macroalbuminuria as well, and of course the unmet clinical needs like weight and hypoglycemia. In fact, in most of the guidelines, we actually have a place of selection of an oral antidiabetic agent based on weight issues, whether our target is frank weight loss or whether our target is reduction of weight gain. Multiple groups of drugs are selected according to the pleiotropic effect of weight or for that matter hypoglycemia. In fact, if we are talking about hypoglycemia in today's world, when we have shifted from the concept of the diabetic triad that we had previously, and the triad would include the FPS, the fasting blood sugar, the PPBS, the postprandial blood sugar, and subsequently the glycosylated hemoglobin. Now, these were the initial diabetic triad. Now we have moved to the concept of diabetic hexad, and the diabetic hexad, along with these three components, would also include the overall hypoglycemia, the nocturnal hypoglycemia, and the glycemic variability. And in today's world, we have a very interesting concept to measure the glycemic variability with the TIR, that is the time in range. So these six components would be the ones forming the diabetic hexad, or for that matter what we call the diabetic sixad. And we need to understand the role of the newer agents like the DPP4 inhibitors in addressing the issues pertaining to the diabetic hexad and how that reduces the chance of hypoglycemia. Yes, throughout our course of discussion, we will indeed be comparing vildagliptin with the other different classes of agent, including but not limited to the very popular sulfonylurea glimepiride, and how the targets are being made, how the efficacy are being compared, and how the hypoglycemic episodes are comparable between the two classes of agent. The synergistic effects and combinatorial effect of vildagliptin and metformin is something that we are addressing here. Vildagliptin improves the insulin secretion and suppresses inappropriate glucagon secretion. Treatment associated with no weight gain and minimal hypoglycemia. Kindly note that even DPP4 inhibitors, although these are not the classical insulin secretagogues, the classical insulin secretagogues are of course the sulfonylureas like glimepiride or glyclazide or glipizide, and in fact even the repaglinide. Repaglinide would also be a modified form of insulin secretagogue, the glinides. But yes, the DPP4 inhibitors in a way are also insulin secretagogues. Yes, they the different, as we know, the incretin effect is the comparison of the response of insulin secretion when we are comparing IV glucose with oral glucose. But yes, technically, even the DPP4 inhibitors improve insulin secretion and they are technically also insulin secretagogues. Metformin, the biguanides, enhances insulin sensitivity, first line anti-diabetic drug according to most guidelines throughout the world, not responsible for enhancing beta cell function and hence can't be used as monotherapy in advanced stages. But the combination produces better glycemic weight. But the combination of vildagliptin and metformin produces better glycemic control, no associated weight or increase in cardiovascular risk, and the patient convenience and compliance is increased with the combination effect. Starting early with vildagliptin plus metformin reduces the risk of addition of the third agent by 58%. We will try to look at the data. Yes, incidence of the second failure, and this is data from the verified trial in the Indian patients in verified trial. What the verified trial is, we will be taking up subsequently, but as of now, we do know obviously that the verified trial is for early combination of metformin plus vildagliptin, contributed by multiple countries throughout the world, and India was a significant contributor. We are looking at the Indian patients, and yes, the principal investigator was of course Dr. V. Mohan, a very noted figure in the Indian diabetes scenario. Now look at this, when we are comparing the drug failure and what was the second failure, at 3 months difference, that is at any point 3 months apart or at any point 13 weeks apart, 2 HbA1c more than HbA1c was considered as failure. And what we find when we are comparing Vilda 50 milligram BD plus metformin compared to metformin, look at the hazard ratio. The hazard ratio is 0.42. So if the hazard ratio is 0.42, the relative risk reduction is 1 minus 0.42, that is 0.58, that is 58%. That is what we see, that the vildagliptin plus metformin reduces the risk of addition of third agent by 58%. Look at the 95% confidence interval, very significant one. It does not include 0, so it's a very significant one, also very narrow one, 0.23 to 0.7. And look at the p-value, very significant as well. 53% risk reduction in time to initial failure versus monotherapy, once again in the Indian subgroup of the verify. Look at the hazard ratio, it is 0.47. So the relative risk reduction is 1 minus 0.47, that is 0.53. So in percentage, that is 53%. As we can see, 53% risk reduction in time to initial failure versus monotherapy in the Indian subgroup. Once again, a very narrow confidence interval. The confidence interval does not include 0. And look at the p-value, a very significant one as well. And we are going further into the proper description and understanding of what the verified trial is all about. The verified trial is the first clinical study which investigated long-term clinical benefits of an early combination treatment strategy and provided a step forward in context to earlier approaches. And what we find, so essentially it's done, the inclusion criteria were relatively young patient between 18 and 70 years of age. Look at the BMI, a relatively non-obese patient. Look at the HbA1c, 6.5 to 7.5. So essentially these were patients in the very early part. Essentially they were classically treatment naive or maximum received treatment of metformin maximum up to 4 weeks. So essentially these were what we might call treatment naive patients. The diagnosis of type 2 diabetes would be less than equal to 24 months. So very young diabetics, relatively young diabetics, relatively treatment naive diabetics, relatively well controlled diabetics. And look at the GFR. So the inclusion criteria had a GFR more than equal to 60 ml per minute. So essentially CKD had not set in. We have described repeatedly the Verify study design in multiple such webinar platforms. So once again, the running period of 3 weeks where the dose of metformin were correspondingly increased from 500 to 1000 to 1500 milligram per day, and then patients were randomized 1:1 to either get metformin or vildagliptin or metformin only. That is the first period. Visits were done every 3 months or 13 weeks. And yes, treatment failure was defined as 2 consecutive values of HbA1c more than equal to 7% on either of the arms, and if they were inadequately controlled in the third period they were put on insulin. That is not our area of concern. What we find is that in the green arm, and the green arm is the monotherapy arm, treatment failure on an average is occurring at 36 months, that is on an average at 3 years. Whereas in the metformin plus vildagliptin arm, the treatment failure defined as 2 consecutive HbA1c at least 3 weeks apart, HbA1c more than equal to 7%, that took more than 5 years to occur. So 3 years versus 5 years. We have already discussed the legacy effect of diabetes control previously in UKPDS 33 and 34. So we are not really looking into the legacy effect related issues here. We can clearly see that in treatment naive patient, if we are putting the patient on early combination therapy, treatment failure is occurring at on an average 5 years compared to 3 years in the monotherapy group. Once again, look at the hazard ratio. The hazard ratio, as you can see, is 0.51. So the relative risk reduction is 49%, 59%, approximately 50% relative risk reduction of treatment failure in the combination therapy arm compared to the monotherapy arm. The Verify was a major study because it included patients who were newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, were initiated on monotherapy, but were actually at a high risk of therapeutic inertia. Patients with combined therapy were taking up to 5 years before there was failure compared to the monotherapy group where the failure was occurring at approximately 3 years, and that is what we have seen, approximately 36 months. And there was a delay in failure in the first outcome, and the failure of HbA1c being defined as two subsequent values of HbA1c more than equal to 7% 13 weeks apart. So what are the key findings from Verify? Early combination therapy halved the risk of time to initial treatment failure. We saw that the hazard ratio was 0.49. So indeed, halving the time to initial treatment failure versus monotherapy strategy treatment failure. The median time to failure was 3 years. We saw that was around 36 months. So yes, 3 years in the initial monotherapy strategy compared to over 5 years. So yes, more than 60 months, around 61.9 months, approximately 62 months in the combination therapy strategy. When all patients were receiving combination therapy, the risk for time to second treatment failure reduced by 26% in the combination therapy arm. We have not projected the data in the subsequent arm when the patient was on insulin, but I mean, it's not a part of this presentation, but we have looked into that presentation previously as well. So this clearly is what we might call the legacy effect that is setting in. Both approaches were of course safe and well tolerated, but we can clearly see that the treatment failure is occurring much earlier and in a more significant way in the monotherapy arm compared to the combination arm. Guideline recommendations for early use of combination of the management of type 2 diabetes. Now subsequently what we will try to analyze is the comparison of vildagliptin with multiple classes of agent and even intra-class. So we will try to understand the comparison between vildagliptin and teneligliptin, between vildagliptin and sitagliptin, between vildagliptin and linagliptin, and so on and so forth, and of course between other classes of drugs as well. Example being vildagliptin compared to glimepiride is something that we will be discussing now. Now, what does the ADA suggest? We need to understand with this we need to take with the proverbial pinch of salt. That yes, do understand that vildagliptin plus metformin would be a part of the recommendation, but definitely not teneligliptin plus metformin. Very limited data with teneligliptin as well. Evaluating the combinatorial and the synergistic effect of vildagliptin and metformin. Once again, look at the upper part of this. I believe the cursor is there, and this is the placebo plus metformin. And when we are comparing to any combination of vildagliptin, be it 50 mg daily, be it the 100 mg daily along with metformin, I mean, even the visual representation creates such a wide gap in the mean HbA1c between the combination arms and the monotherapy with metformin arm. With the mean fasting glucose, yes, you can see it's 11, 10 and 9. Don't be surprised by this. This is millimole per liter. If you multiply this by 18, you get milligram per dl. So that would be a unit that we are more accustomed to as far as India is concerned. But of course, we do know that UK works along the millimole per liter. In fact, a very adjoining country like Bangladesh also works on millimole per liter. Yes, so mean fasting, look at the massive reduction from the monotherapy arm compared to the combination therapy arms. Evaluating combinatorial and synergistic effects of vildagliptin and metformin. This is of course data from the beta cell function in 24 weeks. Once again, we will only look at the visual representation associated with no weight gain and no incidence of hypoglycemia. Vildagliptin is well tolerated and proves clinically meaningful as an add-on therapy in patients with type 2 diabetes inadequately controlled with metformin. This is also something that we have seen in the verified data. Vildagliptin in combination with metformin had superior effect in terms of changes in HbA1c than the increased dose of metformin alone. Okay, this is another concept that we need to understand, So if your patient, say for example, you have a patient, right, and the patient is as a primary therapy, as a first line therapy, you put the patient on metformin. Now the patient is not reaching the HbA1c target. If we are looking at a relatively young patient, if you are looking at a relatively young patient who has no risk of hypoglycemia, maybe he does not have any ASCVD risk, if the patient is not having a CKD risk, so what would your HbA1c target be like? Maybe around 7, particularly in a young patient. And in such a patient, if you are starting the patient on metformin, so what would be your next line of management? Would it be a good idea to keep on increasing the dose of metformin to the highest tolerated and the highest recommended dose of metformin? Or would it be a good idea to add your vildagliptin in such a patient? So what does data show? Look at the left hand part of your slide. So HbA1c reducing from 7.22, the upper arm is the metformin high dose arm, and compare it to the vildagliptin plus metformin combination arm. Significant difference between the two. If you are looking at the percentage of patients with advanced HbA1c more than equal to 8.5, once again in the vildagliptin plus metformin combination arm compared to the high dose metformin, what is the proportion of patients reaching the targeted HbA1c? 53% in the vildagliptin plus metformin arm compared to 44% in the high dose metformin without vildagliptin arm. And the C percentage of patients who achieved HbA1c less than equal to 6.5% without GI events. And here we are looking at the adverse effect profile. For that matter, we are looking at the tolerability of the drug. The vildagliptin plus metformin arm, the percentage of patient, once again 53% compared to approximately 44% in the high dose metformin arm. So combination treatment of vildagliptin with metformin was superior to higher doses of metformin. It was well tolerated and had a very similar safety profile of that of the high dose metformin. So the therapeutic effect of combination of vildagliptin with sulfonylurea. So the upper one is the sulfonylurea arm, and look at the mean. The SAE of course stands for the standard error of mean. So the mean HbA1c, look at the difference between the two by only 24 weeks. This is not a very long study. Even within 24 weeks, look at the gross discrepancy between the two. The sulfonylurea here is being adequately increasing, whereas here the patients, you are adding vildagliptin added to metformin, and look at the difference between the two. Just look at the visual impression of the data. On your right hand side, once again, look at the mean change in HbA1c more than equal to 1 with the vildagliptin being added to metformin, whereas in the sulfonylurea being increased, it's only 0.46. Therapeutic effect of combination of vildagliptin with sulfonylurea. So vildagliptin being added and sulfonylurea is being added. Once again, the patient is initially on sulfonylurea. So what would be your next target be? Would it be a good idea to keep on increasing the sulfonylurea, or would it be a good idea to add vildagliptin to the sulfonylurea? We have already walked along similar lines when we presented the data on adding metformin to vildagliptin or keeping on increasing the dose of metformin. So we have now data to show that it's a good idea, better idea, clinically making more sense would be to add a vildagliptin to the metformin rather than increasing the dose of vildagliptin. And we now see that it's pretty similar with the sulfonylureas as well. So rather than keep on increasing the sulfonylureas, you look at the mean PP, look at the mean fasting in the vildagliptin added arm in dark black. In both of them, the mean HbA1c and the mean fasting values are lesser in the vildagliptin added arm. Comparison of vildagliptin versus glimepiride in combination with metformin. So advantages of vildagliptin over glimepiride: proportion of patients achieving target HbA1c without hypoglycemia was more. Extent of FPG, that is fasting plasma glucose reduction from baseline, was similar with both the drugs, and effective reduction in hypoglycemia with no significant weight gain. Vildagliptin in combination with metformin is an effective treatment option for patients with mild hyperglycemia, older as well as fragile individuals who are more prone to hypoglycemia. I mean, looking at, once again, this is a visual representation of the two. The p-value is not given here. In fact, the p-value is given here. Comparison of the incidence and severity of hypoglycemic events. The deep black here is the vildagliptin arm, and the checkered one here is the glimepiride. Look at the gross difference in the hypoglycemic events between the two, significantly higher values in the glimepiride compared to the vildagliptin, and the p-value, as we saw, was significant as well. Comparison of vildagliptin versus sitagliptin as add-on therapy to insulin and oral glycemic agents. We are comparing vildagliptin and sitagliptin with linagliptin, and the change in HbA1c in the vildagliptin group here, as we can see, is the highest. Greatest proportion of patients in vildagliptin group achieve the target HbA1c. So the reduction is also the highest in the vildagliptin arm when we are comparing it to the sitagliptin arm, and the proportion of patients reaching the target HbA1c is also the highest in the vildagliptin arm. In fact, we see that even the linagliptin arm scores better compared to the sitagliptin arm in this study. Vildagliptin was found to be more efficacious in terms of decreasing insulin requirement and achieving target HbA1c level compared to sitagliptin and linagliptin. Comparison of vildagliptin versus sitagliptin as add-on therapy to insulin and oral hypoglycemic agents. And we've already seen some comparison between vilda and sita and lina. And in fact, the higher proportion of patients in the vildagliptin arm are reaching the target HbA1c, and the highest HbA1c reduction is in the vildagliptin arm as well. And here also you see that on your screen that the fasting plasma glucose levels in vildagliptin group was lower than sitagliptin group at 12 weeks. So within a very short while, within only 12 weeks of therapy, and that's around 3 months, significant reduction in the vildagliptin arm compared to the sitagliptin arm. In fact, even the PP, the postprandial glucose in the vildagliptin group, was lower than in the sitagliptin group at 12 weeks. Vildagliptin was found to be more effective in decreasing insulin requirement and achieving glycemic control when compared to sitagliptin. So the vildagliptin metformin and teneligliptin metformin comparison. Yes, teneligliptin versus vildagliptin. Kindly note that among the different gliptins that we have, there is some criticism with these two molecules because they don't really have that dedicated cardiovascular outcome trial. We are not going into that, but yes, we know that sitagliptin through SAVOR-TIMI, linagliptin through both Carolina and Carmelina, or afogliptin through Examine actually have a dedicated cardiovascular outcome trial. The teneligliptin and the vildagliptin would be the ones where such a very dedicated cardiovascular outcome trial is not there. But here we are comparing vilda and teneli with combination. Look at the vilda plus metformin arm. Look at the HbA1c reduction 1.8. Look at the fasting reduction 46 compared to 22. So vildagliptin metformin found to be more effective in reducing the HbA1c and fasting on direct comparison with linagliptin and metformin. Vildagliptin as an add-on therapy to insulin for the treatment of long-standing diabetes. Vildagliptin 50 BD in addition to insulin with or without concomitant metformin is an effective therapy option owing to its ability to reduce HbA1c reduction with no significant weight gain and no significant hypoglycemic incidence in severity. Once again, this is the adjusted mean change in HbA1c. The white one is the placebo arm. The patients were only getting the insulin and compare it to vildagliptin and compare it to the other molecules as well. So in the vildagliptin arm, very significant reduction compared to the placebo arm. The vildagliptin and teneligliptin comparison, we looked into the teneli plus metformin compared to vilda plus metformin combination. Very significant reduction in the vilda arm, and here we are comparing monotherapy with either of the DPP4 inhibitors, that is teneli and vilda. And here also look at the HbA1c reduction, very significant reduction, 0.88 compared to 0.5 comparing vilda with teneli. And vilda and teneli comparison, we are looking at the fasting. Once again, very significant comparison, 22 reduction in the vilda arm compared to 14 in the teneli arm, whereas as far as PP is concerned, 70 compared to 49. We must always remember that these are molecules which have a role on the incretin effect. So oral glucose load compared to IV glucose load and the response of insulin is exactly what the incretin effect is. So yes, and technically these are also insulin secretagogues. They increase the insulin secretion from the beta cell mass in response to the oral glucose. So look at the gross reduction in the PP glucose 70 in the vildagliptin arm compared to the Tenali arm. HOMA-IR, as we know, is a marker or measure of the insulin resistance, and at 3 months the HOMA-IR levels and the noise, you will see levels were significantly decreased with vildagliptin in the high HOMA-IR arm but not with teneligliptin. So the insulin sensitivity issues is also adequately addressed by the vildagliptin compared to teneligliptin. So it basically stands out as a DPP4 inhibitor. So vildagliptin inhibition of DPP4 enzyme more potently compared to teneligliptin. So it's a 20 milligram per day dose of teneligliptin compared to vilda 50 BD. And vilda, in fact, we know when we compare vilda and sita and lina and alogliptin and teneligliptin, so both vilda and sita have the highest 24-hour DPP4 inhibition. In fact, vilda has amongst the highest among all DPP4 inhibitors. So 24-hour DPP4 inhibition is basically the highest with vilda among all the gliptins, all the DPP4 inhibitors. We are looking at the DPP8, DPP9 obstruction and why that is relevant. It is basically relevant because of the adverse effect profile pertaining to DPP4 inhibitors. So higher is the specificity of DPP4 inhibition compared to DPP8-9 inhibition, lower is the risk. There are two kinds of risks, two kinds of issues pertaining to the adverse effect profile of the DPP4 inhibitors. One would be QT prolongation, and QT prolongation can increase the risk of sudden cardiac death by producing polymorphic VT through Torsades D pointers. That is also higher in the teneligliptin arm, as you can see, and also the higher risk of pemphigus vulgaris with higher DPP8, DPP9 inhibition compared to DPP4 inhibition between the two molecules. So both the adverse effect related issues are slightly higher in the teneligliptin arm compared to the vildagliptin arm. Effect on alpha cell sensitivity. So vilda enhances the alpha cell responsiveness to both the suppressive effects of hyperglycemia and the stimulatory effects of hypoglycemia. But no such effect is seen in teneligliptin, essentially from preclinical data. The cardiovascular outcome data, effect on hospitalization due to heart failure. Regarding teneli, there is no data. There is no dedicated data pertaining to hospitalization due to heart failure or effect on cardiovascular death. Of course, with vilda, although there is no, strictly speaking, there is no dedicated cardiovascular outcome trial, but we have multiple evidence regarding vildagliptin to show that there is no increased risk of heart failure or no increased risk of major adverse cardiovascular event with vildagliptin arm. Published in the Diabetes, Obesity and Metabolic Research 2015. So both important components of cardiovascular issues and cardiovascular death, effect on hospitalization due to heart failure and effect on cardiovascular death, there is no increased risk of higher hospitalization due to heart failure and no increased risk of major adverse cardiovascular event in the vilda arm. Hypoglycemia incidence, yes, it's very low, almost comparable to placebo in the vildagliptin arm compared to the teneligliptin arm. So dual effects of vildagliptin, effect of vildagliptin to improve the glycemic control and its low hypoglycemic potential. The lowering of the fasting, as we have seen in multiple clinical trials, lowering of the postprandial glucose level and very significant reduction, if I may add, around 70 mg per dl reduction in the postprandial blood glucose, suppression of plasma glucagon levels during the hyperglycemic step, increased plasma glucagon level during the hypoglycemic clamp step, significantly higher euglycemia issues and hyperglycemia is low as well, hypoglycemic events are low as well. However, decreases during hypoglycemia, so hypoglycemic issues are minimal with vildagliptin as well. Vildagliptin enhances alpha cell responsiveness to both the suppressive effects of hyperglycemia and the stimulative effects of hypoglycemia, reduces the chance of hypoglycemic events as well. Finally, the summary and conclusion. Holistic therapeutic management necessitates understanding of pathophysiological mechanisms, delay the disease progression by using different drug classes at an early stage of the disease. DPP4 inhibitors are guideline recommended for type 2 diabetes therapy for drug classes where weight gain is a significant issue, where hypoglycemia is a significant issue. In both such cases, DPP4 inhibitors are very important molecules. Even if you're looking at ADA guidelines, if you are looking at ADA EASD consensus statement, if we are looking at NICE guidelines as well, everywhere where weight gain is a consistent issue, is an important issue, where hypoglycemia is a significant issue. In both such cases, DP4 inhibitors are a very important component of the anti-diabetic armamentarium. Vildagliptin is well tolerated and efficacious when used as an add-on therapy to type 2 diabetes, not only in the late stage of the disease but also in the early part of the disease, as adequately projected, promoted, and proven by verified trial. Vildagliptin shows higher benefits to risk ratio for effective management. The strategy of an early combination approach with vildagliptin plus metformin in patients with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes significantly and consistently improves long-term glycemic durability compared with metformin monotherapy. Thank you so much. We are at the end of our presentation and now we are open to take questions.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for conducting such an extensive and enchanting session for all the